I'm Mark Golub, and in the news, an upsetting decision by the Israeli cabinet that's having serious repercussions not only in the state of Israel, but throughout the Jewish world, and especially in the American Jewish community, having to do with the issue of conversion in the Jewish state. Many of you may know that thanks to the tireless work of people in Israel like Natan Sharansky, chairman of the Jewish Agency, and the work of a coalition of Jewish leaders here in the United States, the prior Knesset adopted conversion procedures designed to make it easier for Israelis to convert to Judaism. Basically, Orthodox rabbis in local municipalities were empowered to perform conversions through the establishment of autonomous rabbinic courts, which meant that the central office of the Chief Rabbinate, which is ultra-Orthodox, had to accept conversions performed by rabbis who very often were less severe and less strict in their requirements for conversion. This was especially important to the Olim, the new immigrants from the former Soviet Union, many of whom are now living a Jewish life, serving in the Israeli army, are loyal to the state of Israel and the Jewish people, but who may not have had a Jewish mother and therefore are not considered Jewish by halakha, Jewish law. And many of these Olim from the former Soviet Union wish to formally convert, perhaps in order to marry a Jew. But the process dominated by the ultra-Orthodox Chief Rabbinate made their conversion in practical terms very difficult and often off-putting. So the prior Knesset's changing the conversion process, opening it up to more moderate mainstream rabbis, was hailed as a major step forward in the socialization process of Israel and was seen by American Jewry as a step towards compromise that held promise for a more inclusionary Jewish system in Israel, one that would embrace the non-Orthodox Jewish pluralism which characterizes American Jewish life here in the United States. But now all the work and what's been perceived as major advancements in the religious life of the state of Israel seems to have been washed down the drain, as the Israeli cabinet has handed power and authority in the area of conversion back to the ultra-Orthodox. And why? Because the new coalition government of Benjamin Netanyahu has had to make deals with the two major ultra-religious parties, Shas and United Torah Judaism, in order to keep them in the coalition and to keep the coalition government intact. Natan Sharansky has now gone on record opposing the Knesset reversal, saying that it is unacceptable that a matter so vital to the future of the Jewish people and to Israel's existence as a Jewish state can be canceled. Well, here in America, one of America's foremost leaders, who was intimately engaged in the issue of conversion and Jewish pluralism in Israel, is the wonderful president and CEO of the JFNA, the Jewish Federations of North America, Jerry Silverman, who joins us now on our JBS phones. Jerry, thank you so much for joining us and giving us a few moments.
My pleasure to spend time with you, Mark.
Thank you. So, Jerry, what's your take on the Knesset decision to roll back the gains you and so many others worked so hard to achieve in the area of conversion in Israel?
A point of information, if I may. This bill was presented by General Elazar Stern originally. It was his legislation. Elazar actually ran the Nativ program, which was a Jewish education and also conversion program in the IDF, and then became a member of Knesset in the Hatnuah party, and this was his major legislation. Mm-hmm. He worked so hard and thoughtfully with all streams of Judaism to put forth legislation that would truly make a difference. Originally, it was going to go through the Knesset. What ended up happening was it actually became a government resolution. A government resolution is easier to overturn than something legislated by law through the Knesset, and this was a government resolution that was rescinded yesterday, as you discussed. The reason that we completely support Natan Sharansky, chair of the Jewish Agency's disappointment is because we worked with Elazar Stern through the process with the concept of trying to create more intimacy in the conversion process by giving and creating opportunities for the chief municipality rabbis to set up conversion courts in order to create more local connection to these olim, as you had discussed, upwards of 300,000, to be able to choose to convert, but do it in a way where they're building relationships in their local community. And, oh, by the way, this is Orthodox conversion. And our colleagues at the Reform movement, the conservative Masorti movement, who had some challenges, also supported this opportunity, knowing that there's this existential issue of the numbers of non-halachic Jews growing in the country, growing and creating all kinds of challenges and issues and stories of families and connections that are made and then broken off because of lineage.
Yes,
and
Jerry, let me interrupt you for one moment, because it's very, very important that our viewers understand what you're saying. I mentioned it in passing in my open, but you have said something very important. I want the audience to understand. The autonomous local courts that were set up by the Knesset were still Orthodox. There was no attempt yet to open up the Israeli system, the system of religious conversion, to non-Orthodox streams of Judaism. That's not what's at play here. It really is, what's at play is really the degree of orthodoxy and the extent to which local municipalities would have local courts, which might have easier ways in which, again, we're speaking about mostly Russian Olim, although not exclusively Russian Olim, but Russian Olim could convert. And what Jerry Silverman is reminding all of us is, please don't confuse this with a larger issue, what he calls an existential issue, of Jewish pluralism in Israel. This was seen, Jerry, as a step in the right direction, but you are right to remind everyone that still within the system, all conversions were to be Orthodox. The question was, to what extent would the Chief Rabbinate, which is ultra-Orthodox and had a vice hold on the way conversion in Jewish life is lived in Israel, to what extent would that be eased? The former Knesset eased it, and now what you're saying is we've just seen a sort of a reversal. And I interrupted you as you were saying you are sympathetic to the position taken by Natan Sharansky.
We're disappointed right along with Natan. We worked side by side with him and the Jewish Agency on this issue, supported it. And the sad part, and one of the challenges is that this bill gave the authority to the chief rabbis of the municipalities across Israel. Remember, the chief rabbis of a municipality are appointed by the Rabbinate.
Yes.
So in essence, there was the overturning basically said that the Rabbinate wasn't comfortable with their municipality chief rabbis creating these conversion courts, and so thus they wanted to maintain this control, which right now the conversions that are under the Rabbinate's control are these regional conversion courts, which by many stories are not received well by any means by those who go through it.
Exactly. What do you think the reaction is going to be inside Israel? And I ask you that, Jerry, because there have been many people here in the American Jewish community who are just geschreien, Gewalt, Gewalt, Gewalt. The first thing any of us always need to ask is, what's the reaction among the Israeli people for whom this is a real-life, day-to-day issue, and it is a product of a fair and democratic electoral process which American Jewry should celebrate. But so far, what do you hear is the reaction among the Israelis in the street to this reversal of the conversion process?
So I'm going to answer it two ways. I think the Israelis in the street somewhat are accepting, I wouldn't say accepting, they're frustrated, but not surprised.
Yes.
By any means.
Yes.
I think the reaction by some of the chief rabbis of municipalities and rabbis who felt that this was the right strategy to reach critical mass of people and connect with people in a very positive way. I think what we're going to see is potentially coming out of this a parallel system that could be created.
Really?
I think that we're at the point where we could potentially see that happen.
Okay, and this is not just a wish on your part. You've heard rumblings of this?
I have heard rumblings of dialogue that is taking place by some very serious people, and we'll see what happens, but that would not surprise me at this point.
Okay, a prediction of sorts from Jerry Silverman. Now, my question for you, and the reason why I'm so happy that I have a chance to speak with you, Jerry, and people who've watched JBS know, first of all, we are dear friends, and I think what you do is just fabulous. But what you were very involved, you've been involved in an attempt to build bridges between American Jewry and the State of Israel. You've been involved in a number of issues that deal with the advancement of Jewish pluralism in the State of Israel. And you are, as the head of the JFNA, you are speaking to all the time tens of thousands of American Jews, the average Yidden here in America. One of the things I want to know from you is whether you think there will be any serious repercussions within American Jewry. Will American Jews, Jerry, use this as a reason or even as an excuse to distance themselves from Israel? And is that a concern of yours in any way?
I think that if we look at the last 6 weeks, Mark, we have to look at this being another disappointment from a point of situations that have occurred that have been very difficult for American Jewry to really understand and to swallow. The first being these 7 boys, autistic boys, trying to get bar mitzvah in Rehovot, and weren't allowed because they were going to be bar mitzvah in a Masorti synagogue. The second being...
Jerry, let me just make sure our audience understands. And Jerry is pointing out to, again, an incident which received a lot of attention in the Anglo-Jewish press here in the Jewish community. But as he says, there is a school in Rehovot, and it had farmed out a program to a Masorti, which is the Israeli conservative movement's wing in the State of Israel. the Masorti movement has a wonderful program for autistic children, boys and girls. And this program prepared students for a bar bat mitzvah ceremony. But it was done under the auspices of a school. And the mayor of Rehovot ultimately said the school has both Orthodox and non-Orthodox parents, and it would be offensive to the Orthodox parents of this school if a service was conducted under school auspices by a Masorti, a non-Orthodox rabbi. And ultimately, this mayor canceled the bar mitzvah, which meant the kids didn't have a bar mitzvah. Then the president of Israel, Reuven Rivlin, first said that the kids could come into his residence and have the service there, and a deal was worked out where there would be an Orthodox rabbi present and a Masorti rabbi present. But at the last moment, Reuven Rivlin also said that the Masorti rabbi could not officiate; it could only be an Orthodox rabbi. And the Masorti movement felt that they had been betrayed, and they refused to go forward with the service. And it has created both tensions and disappointment, as Jerry said, and some ill feeling. Jerry, my own reaction to the story is, on the one hand, I wish it had gone forward. I wish this were not an issue, but I find it a hair more complicated than simply saying the Masorti movement was in some way disenfranchised by this movement. I understand when you and I want to create an event that has in it both Orthodox and non-Orthodox, a dinner, for example, we will create a dinner with kashrut, even though the majority of people don't observe kashrut, because we want those who do observe kashrut to be able to be present. In some way, that was the argument being used by the school. It was not the argument really used by Rivlin, and as you point out, it has created a degree of tension and disappointment, and you say that that is one incident in a series of incidents of which this conversion reversal is simply the most recent. I wanted to give some context to make sure our audience understood what you were referring to, and again, I interrupted you. Please proceed.
No, thank you for clarifying. The one piece of that puzzle I would add is that if this was a first-time program where it was canceled based on these reasons, I could understand it in a much better way. But this is a program that has been going on in a number of communities in Israel for upwards of 20 years. So when all of a sudden you shut that down, and I'm thinking of the families who ended up becoming pawns in this. To me, of these special kids, to me was, somewhat very challenging to swallow. The one thing I will say is the PM's office, the Prime Minister's office, worked diligently trying to find a solution there.
That's interesting. By the way, who made the kids pawns?
I'm saying when you look at the fact of the mayor putting a halt on the ceremony taking place at the Masorti synagogue, then the diaspora ministry got involved in trying to suggest it be moved to the president's residence, which created controversy, and the families kind of being in the middle saying, okay, that would work for us, Masorti would work for us. The mayor says, no, this doesn't work for us. And then there's been other alternatives that have been tried. They kind of become the ones in the middle, and from a familial standpoint, the parents, I feel terrible that these boys in this case, have studied, have looked forward to this type of event, and it never took place.
I understand, and I feel they were pawns too. I only wanted to see who you thought made them pawns. And you and I may disagree here. It seems to me that everybody made them pawns, and everybody is equally responsible, both the Masorti movement in Israel and certainly the president's office and the mayor's office, but no less the Masorti movement, because any one of those three could have said, for the sake of the children, we'll accommodate and we won't make this an issue. But everybody, Jerry, the mayor, President Rivlin, and the Masorti movement all wanted to make an issue of this more than they wanted to serve the boys. So again, I agree with you that the kids were the pawns. I just wanted to make sure that you understood my position is I'm angry at everybody. I don't see this as a black and white issue when it comes to the kids.
So I'll agree with you when it comes to the kids. We can disagree because there's so much complexity to this and behind the scenes that that I would suggest that not so much everybody's at fault, but
Okay.
to me it's just a sad situation.
I agree. And by the way, I trust you 1,000%. If you tell me there are things behind the scenes, I believe you. Okay, continue. You're saying this is just one of a series of incidents.
So you have that, then followed by the Minister of Religious Affairs, who came out publicly with a statement that reform jury is a disaster for the Jewish people.
Yes, you're absolutely right.
And which I credit the Prime Minister, who immediately, and they saw the quote late at night a couple of weeks ago, and within that same night put out a statement,
Right.
very clearly saying that is absolutely not a statement of the government of
Right.
Israel. It's the statement of an individual. And he also said it again. But again, that's another, wedge that creates, divisiveness. And then you had the conversion issue, which, came up at Sunday's cabinet meeting. So, these are a series of issues that have come up that there's a lot of other big issues that we should be coming together around and working together on that creates a divide that, frankly, is not in the best interest of the Jewish people.
I agree with you 100%. But now I still want your instinct here. To what extent are you worried about the relationship between the American Jewish community and the State of Israel?
So, my worry is that I'm going to say this on two fronts. I think that in talking to some of the leadership from various movements and streams and talking to various rabbis from movements from all sides, I hear the same language, is that let's start off by making the statement that we have an uninhibited connection and love of the State of Israel.
Yes.
Okay? This is what you hear from any national, rabbinic, any leader I've talked to, from Rabbi Rick Jacobs to Rabbi Julie Schoenfeld to Rabbi Steve Warnick to Rabbi Kenny Brander. I mean, you hear that is the first word. It's an uninhibited love and connection. There are issues that we have that we're not in unanimity on, and they're issues of divide. And so my belief is that if we focus more on the issues that bring us together and that we have unity around, i.e. we're just celebrating, and I don't know if celebrating is the right word, or remembering the Yortzeit of the three boys right now.
Yes.
We need to keep that in mind, is that there is a unity that we have as a Jewish people, and that I'm not as worried that the divide is irreparable. I think what we have to continue to focus on are the things that we do have in common and the things that do bring us together, and that brings that divide, which will never be 100% because, as President Shimon Peres, always said, we are a people of dissatisfaction.
Yes, right.
He said that's our strength and that's our weakness. So I frankly agree with him.
Yes.
But as long as we know that there's going to be dissatisfaction in how we deal with one another and some of the issues we have, we need to remember there's a lot of issues that do bring us together. Mm-hmm. And that's what we try to focus on at Federation.
And you continue to be one of the most important forces that are bringing American Jewry in the State of Israel together, and really American Jewry together as a whole. And so it gives me an opportunity to say in public to you, Kol HaKavod, thank you so very much. You continue to go from strength to strength, and you and I will see each other very soon.
I look forward to it, and it's always a privilege to be part of JBS.
Thank you so much, Jerry. Be well.
You well, Phil.
Jerry Silverman, President and CEO of the JFNA, the Jewish Federations of North America. Before we close, one editorial note. If you saw a recent In the News segment in which we discussed the Supreme Court ruling making gay marriage the law of the land, you may have heard a comparison made between the Torah's prohibition of male homosexuality and the Torah's prohibition of heterosexual intercourse during a wife's menstrual period. There was a suggestion that just as the Torah designates male homosexuality as a capital crime, the Torah also views sex with a menstruating woman or wife as a capital crime. To clear up any misunderstanding, sex during menstruation is not a capital crime in the Torah or in Jewish law or in Jewish tradition. There are capital crimes in the Torah where a Jewish court actually executes a person convicted of a certain crime. In the Torah, murder is a capital offense, punishable by capital punishment. Violating the laws of the Shabbat, capital offense, punishable by capital punishment, executed by a human court of law. While sexual relations during menstruation is a sin, explicitly mentioned in the book of Leviticus, it is not a capital crime, punishable by death at the hands of a Jewish court. One can make comparisons when one wishes, when seeking to elucidate Torah law and the Jewish tradition, but it is somewhat misleading to suggest that sexual intercourse during menstruation is a capital crime in the Torah or in Jewish law. It is not. And that's this edition of In the News. Thanks to our director, Sloan Copeland. Wonderful job, Sloan. Production coordinator, Serge Goldberg. JBS Associate Director, Dara Golub. And to our producer, Carol Lilienthal. Until the next time, I'm Mark Golub. Be well, my friends.